In part 1 of our video series discussing why Ancient Sith, such as Vitiate, Naga Sadow, and Exar Kun, had stronger force powers than modern Sith, such as Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious, I discussed the Sith history that bridged the gap between the Ancient Sith and the era of Darth Bane. During this roughly 2,500 year period, the Sith were plagued by infighting and an eventual acceptance of warlordism, where Sith Lords were simply content to rule over small tracts of the galaxy free from Republic influence, rather than ruling over the entire galaxy. Needless to say, the Sith Lords of this era could not approximate the power utilized by the Ancient Sith. But it wasn't just that. During the New Sith Wars, a millennium-long conflict between the Sith on one side and the Jedi and the Republic on the other, the Sith Lords in existence from 2000 to 1000 years before the rise of Sidious actually grew to outwardly reject the Ancient Sith. This eventually culminated in the rise of the Brotherhood of Darkness, an organization of Sith that didn't just reject the Ancient Sith, but fully prevented students from even attempting to learn from the Sith archives and to read the wisdom of the preceding Sith Lords. As one might imagine, this climate of exclusion and repudiation of the Ancient Sith resulted in their teachings and rituals being lost. The Sith Lords of Darth Bane's era lost the knowledge of how to replicate the most powerful force abilities of the Ancient Sith. However, Bane would ultimately come to revive the teachings of Sith Lords who dominated the Order millennia earlier. Having rejected the bias against the Ancient Sith and annihilated the entirety of the Brotherhood, Bane ushered in a new era that turned to the wisdom of former Sith such as Darth Revan and Darth Andeddu. This resulted in Bane learning some of the most powerful force abilities that had been lost to his era, such as the Thought Bomb and Essence Transfer. But if Bane, 1,000 years before the rise of Sidious, started a new era more accepting of the Ancient Sith and started learning their powerful teachings and rituals that had previously been lost, why weren't these powerful force abilities seen within the era of Plagueis and Sidious? The question is even more interesting if one considers that Bane's order grew in power over these centuries and would have had time to learn even more abilities during this period. In this video expose, I will explain why the Ancient Sith had stronger force abilities than modern Sith, looking specifically at the events during the 1,000 year gap between Bane and Sidious. In terms of passing down and learning the teachings from the Ancient Sith, the lineage beginning with Darth Bane started off very successfully. Not only did Bane himself learn powerful abilities from Revan and Andeddu, but he instilled a practice of learning from the Sith Lords who ruled the Order millennia prior within his apprentice Darth Zana as well. Unlike Bane, Zana had a natural talent for Sith magic. Therefore, to progress in her skills, she was forced to study the doctrines of the Ancient Sith, such as Freedon Nad. This caused Zana to have successfully mastered a number of powerful force abilities that hadn't been utilized by the Sith for centuries, such as the ability to drive a person insane by forcing them to relive all of their most painful memories. Of course, like any good Sith apprentice, Zana hid her proficiency in many of these abilities from her master, surprising even Bane with her ability to conjure tendrils of pure dark side energy that could easily disintegrate flesh and bone instantly upon contact. Clearly, if every master and apprentice pairing had been similar to that of Bane and Zana, the Sith of Sidious's era would have been able to easily match the Ancient Sith in regard to their force powers. So then what happened to the knowledge of these rituals obtained by Bane and Zana, and why weren't they passed through the Bane lineage of Dark Lords to the era of Plagueis, Sidious, and Vader? Although we've all heard of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, even more tragic for the Sith Order was the fall of Darth Gravid. As Plagueis would recognize roughly 35 years before the Clone Wars, he was the beneficiary of numerous texts, holocrons, and crystals that had been handed down over the years by those Dark Lords who came before him. As understood by Plagueis, furious that he couldn't approximate the powerful force abilities and rituals available to the Ancient Sith, crucial knowledge obtained since the days of Bane had been lost during the mastery of Darth Gravid. In fact, Plagueis considered the actions of Gravid to have been so detrimental in this regard that he told his apprentice Sidious that had it not been for the setback caused by Gravid, the Jedi Order might have already been annihilated centuries before them. So what exactly did Gravid do? Obtaining the rank of Dark Lord within the lineage of Bane's Order of the Sith Lords, Gravid, a human male, reigned as Master of the Sith roughly 500 years before the era of Plagueis and Sidious. While Gravid had initially been accepting of Bane's teachings and the tenets of his order, he would come to believe that the absolute commitment by the Sith to the dark side would ultimately be their undoing. Having been drawn to the light side of the Force, Gravid was convinced that to save the Sith, he had to find a way in which to combine the teachings of the Sith with those accepted by the Jedi Order, an amalgamation of both light and dark philosophies. For example, Gravid began introducing the concepts of altruism and empathy into Sith doctrine. Ultimately, Gravid would slowly begin to lose his mind. Taken by insanity, Gravid became convinced that he had to go one step farther. Not only did he have to combine the two philosophies of the light and dark, but he had to sabotage the Sith teachings to ultimately save and preserve the Order. Locking himself within his fortress, Gravid would successfully destroy numerous Sith artifacts and holocrons that contained the teachings of the Ancient Sith. In one quick action, the Sith would again be plunged into a dark age regarding the knowledge of how to carry out the most powerful Force abilities known to the Ancient Sith. Although Gravid would be killed by his apprentice Darth Gene before all of the knowledge could be destroyed, the damage had been done. The knowledge rediscovered by Bane and the Sith Lords who came after him for roughly 5 centuries was lost. While the Sith would continue to build upon their power in the shadows, carrying Bane's grand plan forward, they would have to do so without the knowledge of how to perform the most powerful Force abilities that were known to the Sith Lords who ruled thousands of years earlier. So there we have it, why the Ancient Sith had stronger Force abilities than modern Sith due to the destruction of knowledge by Darth Gravid. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter at SW Reading Club for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive hangouts and book discussions. If not for me... For Sith Tragedy.